Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to The Back Row from What I Watched Tonight. My name is Matt Hudson, and this is my show, Retrospectives, where I discuss a film which I think is bloody good, with somebody else who thankfully also thinks that film is bloody good. And tonight, I'm very happy to say, a man I've been chasing for a long time, and more than just professionally, the King of Scotland, a horror hound, horror haggis himself, it's Ian Forrest from Behind the Screams podcast. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing good, thank you. And I must say, you're the only person that's chasing me, so I'm all yours, baby.
Mate, lockdown has been tough and hard on me, man. I'm attracted to things I never thought I would be. So,
who'd have thought we'd still be here a year later?
Dude, well, I mentioned Ian does Behind the Screams podcast, and I'll ask Ian to succinctly tell us all about that wonderfully in a second. But when did, because I came on your show with Bloggy for Death by Pod, was that in lockdown still?
You know what? That's a really good question. That's probably something I should have looked
I don't remember, because it feels so long ago.
It was a while ago now. You were one of the very first guests that we actually had on the show. And you know what? It was. I'm just having a look at the date. We released that episode on the 1st of May, 2020.
It feels, and no, we had such a good time. We'll mention that in a minute. But that doesn't feel like it was, 10 months ago. That feels like it was about 2 years ago.
I know. It's crazy. Man. It's crazy how much has happened since then.
I've hated every second of it almost. now I'm thinking about it. But enough of that. Ian, I've mentioned, is the host and creator of Behind the Screams podcast, but I won't describe it. I will let Ian describe the work he does over there. So tell listeners about yourself and BTS.
Yes, so as most of you probably know, I am from Bonnie, Scotland, where, it rains 360 odd days out of the year. I forgot how many days were in a year there. Almost. That's cool. I run the Behind the Screams podcast. We, much like this one, talk about movies, but we specifically, almost exclusively talk about horror movies, but we also do TV shows, we do video games, we do novels. I think we do everything now because we are kind of everywhere. I really took the opportunity of lockdown and everything that was happening to really sort of ramp up what we were doing. And, I never thought we would quite get as far as we have, but we're doing all right.
Yeah, not so. I remember when we started Death by Pod a couple of years ago. Me and Bloggy just have a bit of a laugh. We're on a hiatus in a minute. We haven't split up. We're still going, but we're just taking the COVID time. And I remember Ian's podcast in its kind of infancy, shall we say, similar time as we started, and to see the strides that you guys have taken, because it was just Ian, I believe, to start with, and then now it's expanded, not just in terms of the content, but the amount of people that are on board as well. And it's if you haven't listened to Behind the Screams, we'll give those links at the end, but I absolutely recommend it. But we went on there to speak about Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, yes. And that was a doozy.
that was an episode, and that was a movie, and people need to go check that out. Yeah, the overriding image from that is just the spotty back comment. I can't get that out of my head.
Long live Blocky Balboa.
Absolutely.
God, her ghost hangs over all of this, bless her. She's still alive. I hope she has. I spoke to her earlier on. So check out Behind the Screens. We'll give those links later on. Even if you don't like horror, do go check it out. The King of Scotland will have you rolling around. So tonight, though, it's Retrospectives. For those who don't know, as I've just mentioned, I want to talk about the films that I love. Some may not be the best films of all time, but I think they are. And that's what matters. And I get somebody on who has a similar opinion. And basically, we just talk about how great it is for an hour and a half or so. We will if there's anything we dislike at the end, we will chuck that in as well. But for tonight, though, we're heading back to the 80s and we're talking about Aliens. So yes. Here's the admin before we hear more from Ian, who you've all come to hear from. Aliens, distributed by 20th Century Fox and was released on July the 18th, 1986. Of course, it was directed by James Cameron and stars Sigourney Weaver, Michael Biehn, Paul Reiser, Lance Henriksen, Carrie Henn, Bill Paxton, Jeanette Goldstein, and a host of other Marines. It was made for $18.5 million, and it made a cool $183 million back, which I'm told in today's money is $440 million, give or take. So that's not a bad return. And in terms of awards, well, this is a sci-fi horror film but it got some love at the Oscars. It won for Best Visual Effects and Sound Effects Editing, and it was nominated for Best Sound, Best Original Score, Best Film Editing, Best Art Direction, and you got it, Best Actress for Sigourney Weaver. Almost unheard of for a genre film to get that much love and attention at the Oscars, but Aliens got it. Now, if you haven't seen Aliens, this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen Aliens, the sequel to the critically lauded Alien, go watch the film. It's about 2.5 hours long, depending on which version you watch. Then come back and listen to me and Ian shoot the shit about it. But if you haven't seen it, one last time, spoilers. There, we're done with now. Ian, so you're on this podcast to talk about Aliens because obviously you enjoy it. But what is it about the film, which ranks so highly for you in your list of film?
Well, first of all, if you haven't seen Aliens, what are you even doing with your life?
Yes, perfect.
Like it's 35 years old. People, go and watch it. But yeah, for me, Alien, as in the original, is one of the finest horror movies of all time. And we've covered that previously on our show, and we talked about all the different things, the set design, the acting, how the atmosphere, and this movie for me just takes that and builds on it so well, and it adds in those sort of slightly more action elements to it, because I think there's a load of people out there that will say this is slightly more sort of action sci-fi than horror then there's that debate to be had. But for me, it still is just as tense as that first one at times. It's got, Bill Paxton. Do I need to say much more than Bill
What a great
Paxton?
name as well, Hudson. What a man.
Absolutely. The creature design, again, has been taken and built upon from the first one. You says we're going to throw in some negatives at the end. I'm going to give a spoiler for that. There's not going to be any.
Mate, that's it. On these shows, there are very rarely negatives on here. Some people do, but for the most part, it is usually kind of, well, I don't know, that scene went on for, 30 seconds too long, or the patch on their arm was a bit dark, I couldn't read it. It's that kind of level of nitpick, which is great, but I'm not sure I have any either as a spoiler. But sometimes when we get talking, I think, you know what, that did irk me a bit, but I can't think anything off the top of my head. But the film's 35 years old, so when did you first see this, mate?
You know what? I was trying to think about when I first saw it the other day. I can't pinpoint exactly when it was.
You don't remember the date and time?
I think it was a Wednesday. No, but yeah, I was young. I was too young. I saw this before I saw Alien.
Oh, interesting.
I think I was in the region of sort of 10 or 11 when I first saw this, and I remember just loving it straight away. I was really into sort of my sci-fi and things at the time anyway. And I was, at this point already, a horror movie connoisseur, because I've been watching them for 4 years by this point. So yeah, I remember just loving it straight off the bat. And, Sigourney Weaver, she's the best. She's just the best.
She's so bad. Honestly, she's the most badass in this film. There's moments in this film when obviously rewatched this for this episode, and I'm thinking, yes. You just yes, you go, you get him, you take them all down.
Absolutely.
Even though I've seen this film so many times, mate. When did I first see it? I'm trying to think, about 20 years ago, maybe. It's a while ago now. And I saw Alien first. So I remember seeing that first. So like you said, the kind of claustrophobic horror of Alien, one of the best of all time. And then you get a sequel 7 years later, and you think, well, firstly, that's quite a long time for a sequel, especially since the first one did moderately well in terms of box office. But looking back now, it's a classic. But then this one, like you say, it shakes things up. We've still got horror, but they throw a lot more action in. And Jimmy Cameron said that was a lot to do with him coming off of Terminator 2, basically. So he wanted to meld that in to the horror of Alien, because he didn't want to have make the same film twice, which I quite like the idea of that. If you're going to do a sequel, don't just retread the first film. And that brings me to a point about Alien, which I'll mention later on. But I like the fact that James Cameron and his partner / wife at the time, Gail Ann Hurd, who produced this film, they were insistent of what they wanted this film to be like. I think they left the production, I read, twice, because the studio was interfering too much. And then they finally got their way, and goddamn, am I glad. And I'm not always the biggest fan of James Cameron. Sometimes I think he's a bit of a dick. But I'm glad in this instance he got his way. But well, let's do it, man. Let's get into aliens. And again, for those new to the show, this is where we just go wild. There is no structure. For those who are used to the show, you get me. So, Ian, let's just any moment. What's the kind of one moment that comes to mind when you think of aliens as kind of just one of those great positive things about the film?
Right. There's many moments in this movie. There's many, but there's only one moment that you have to speak about first, isn't there? And it's right at the end. So you says we're going to bounce about. I'm literally starting with almost the final scene. It's got to be "Get away from her, you bitch."
Yes.
That's the most iconic line. And, you were speaking about just how badass Ripley is and Sigourney Weaver is. And that's just the epitome of it all in this movie. Even today, I rewatched this again today, literally not 2 or 3 hours ago, And even today, I was still there going, yes, when she says that line. I still throw my arms up in the air. It's one of the greatest lines in action sci-fi horror cinema history.
Exactly. The whole film's got that maternal edge to it, and it's two mothers, or mother figures. The queen alien who's just been laying like eggs left, right, and centre in a horrific looking sack, and obviously Ripley, who we find out. Her daughter died while she was in stasis, so she's outlived her daughter by a long shot. And Newt, the little Newt Carrie hen, her parents died at the beginning of the film. Ripley then takes it upon herself to look after Newt, and that's what we get at the end. We get this clashing of the kind of mother figures, and I love that moment when she puts on that cargo loading suit. And upon rewatching it, I didn't realise that. Obviously, the way the doors open and you see is like, fuck yes. But then it takes a little while for her to sort of get to the position where she says the line, and I love that it builds and builds to that line.
Yeah, she takes a few steps out, and we've obviously seen earlier in the movie, her using one of these before, these like carrier machines, and it takes her a few seconds. Like you say, it just builds up. What I really love is though, like after that, when you get this sort of fight scene as well, the majority of it is in silence. There's no real score over it, apart from the noise the machine's making, the noise the queen is making. There's no background score or sound effects really until she's opening the outside door, and I love that. I think that's so great.
I love that. Horror's always a genre which is kind of beaten with the score dictates the mood sometimes. So, you get the score starts rising as something's going to happen, and then when you're meant to kind of feel panic, the score tells you that. But not here. They don't. And that's a great point because before the doors open, the queen alien's just found Newt under the floor. So we're already thinking, shit, is Newt going to get chomped here? And then Ripley saves her, and then the fight is great as well. I love the fact that a fight it's not necessarily let's just pick each other up and throw each other around too much. It's more, Ripley's having to fight with what she's got. She grabs the queen by the neck. The queen's trying to, he's got the little alien in her mouth. I forget what it's called, trying to get it. Then the tail's trying to stab her, and she just has to use her smarts to get her in the airlock. And I love that it isn't this big prolonged duel. It is just visceral and just brutal for the short amount of time it's on.
Yeah, because even not even in just horror films, but in action films as well, that's so cliched, isn't it? The big final confrontation, and like you say, that big sort of throwing each other about, doing funky moves, and sometimes impressive stuff. But like you say here, it's very sort of up close and personal. She's not really attacking the queen. She's just fighting her off long enough to get her out of this door, which she doesn't even know she's going to do at the start. So it's not like she had the plan, and it just shows you how quick on her feet Ripley is as a character.
Well, I'm going to come back to the end because literally the entire sequence is just mind-blowingly good. But you mentioned lines and quotes in this film. Some of the quotes in this film, mate, are incredible. Obviously, they pretty much all come from Hudson as well. Obviously, there's two of them. One of the ones which I always laugh at is when Ripley says, this little girl survived longer than this with no weapons and no training. And Hudson's like, well, why don't you put her in charge then? Why don't you put her in charge like a whiny little sod? And of course, the classic, it's game over, man. It's game over. Every time I see it, none of these lines should work, especially that one. You think, well, this guy should really just be the first to die because he's a whiny bastard. But he's one of the heartbeat of the film, and he obviously gets his last stand as well. But that's so. And there's more great lines, but just those two from Hudson, man, just to sort of start on a light note, man. Come on.
For me, it's those two, but it's also start your grinning and drop your linen.
Yeah.
It's particularly funny for me. But you're right, like you say, in any other film, this character would probably be the one you want to die first. The most annoying guy in the entire film, but it just works so powerfully here. And it's Bill Paxton as well. I mean, we all loved Bill Paxton. Rest in peace. Taken too soon.
Absolutely, man.
But yeah, the game over, man, is, I was talking about how, how iconic "Get Away From Her, You Bitches," but "Game Over, Man" is probably just as up there.
Game over, man.
I'm not even going to attempt to say it right.
By the end of this episode, we'll make Ian try it. Ian's voice is a little bit deeper than mine, so we may have a bit of trouble. But another one, because this film has got some like odd humour. There's before we get the first salvo of the alien attack, because this film, like Alien, it takes its time to build up to. We all know what's coming. We know there are aliens out there somewhere. We've seen the first film. We know they're out there. But James Cameron shows that restraint, and he doesn't show us the aliens. It takes about an hour and 4 minutes till the action starts to slowly start to ramp up. So almost half the film we are with these Marines, and we find they're above a thermal reactor. And Lieutenant Gorman basically on Ripley's command, Lieutenant Gorman, who's a dozy sod who's in charge, he makes the team collect the magazines from their guns, and it's Sergeant Apone who says, "What are we supposed to use? Harsh language?" And that gets me every time. It's just the idea of these guys just start cursing at these aliens and then just getting ripped to pieces.
I feel so bad for Apone. He was quite funny himself even before that. When Hudson's get like wisecracking during the briefing, he's almost
get your
like,
ass here.
Yeah, he's like, you think he's going to go over there and just haul him over by his ear or something?
Yeah, he doesn't. Then he goes out. He gets eaten and stuck to the wall, as we find out. So and Corporal Dietrich as well. But what about the characters then? I know we've got plenty more to talk about, but I mentioned the Marines in the first film. They're engineers and just people there to make a quick buck. They're workers. Here, they're Marines. What do you think about the characters and the characterization they get?
It's funny because I think sometimes, especially when it comes to action films, if you've got things like Marines, it's really easy for them to be very cookie cutter.
Yep.
And in this film, we don't get that at all because we've got people like Hudson, and we've spoken about Apone and some others as well. And there's just a whole they've all got these different personalities. You've also got Vasquez, who's this like really, really tough woman, but then you've got Gorman, who's actually a bit of a dick.
He's a massive dick, isn't he?
He's just a wet fart, isn't he? And
well, that's it. Actually, the guy he's actually there's nothing wrong with the dude. He's just in over his head, isn't he? Completely. Or who wouldn't be? Who wouldn't be in this situation? But he really is. This is his second mission, isn't it?
Yeah, he says it's only his second actual mission. But I do like the fact that they all do get slightly different personalities because it's very easy to have that just sort of hoorah sort of personality when it comes to, especially for things like Marines or soldiers or whatever you want to call them. But here it's not quite like that. They do get some, not all of them, but the main ones, they get more subtlety with their character as well. And we get a bit of flirting between Hicks and Ripley as well.
Oh, Hicks is loving it, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He definitely wants a piece of Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah, Michael Biehn's all up there. Yeah, and it's a shame. I mean, I've got my thoughts on Alien 3. I actually don't mind that film. Upon rewatch, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah,
not great. Let me paraphrase. I think it's better than I can't even think what the full was. Resurrection. I think it's better than Resurrection. Is better than both AVP films. I liked Prometheus and I enjoyed Covenant, but I think Alien 3 gets a bad rap. I think it's a bit of a hot mess, but I don't think it's that bad.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't mind Alien 3. Again, it's nothing compared to Alien and Aliens. I think anything that's just got the word resurrection in its title is just a hot steaming turd. If you've not watched Halloween Resurrection,
Oh,
then, we thought Halloween 3 was bad enough. But,
was Resurrection one with was it Buster Rhymes? Yeah,
Buster Rhymes.
He would have
Tyra
fucked the
Banks.
Xenomorph up as well.
You'd have roundhouse kicked that Xenomorph straight off
Exactly.
the space station.
Jesus Christ, man! No, there's a good show, and actually, horror is again. Well, I'm not bashing horror. Ian knows. Well, I do a bloody horror podcast. I love horror films, but sometimes, certainly in slasher films, the characterization, they don't get too much depth afforded to them. They're just there for the killer to look good. But here, we're all waiting for the Xenomorph because we've seen them in the first film. We're all waiting for the Xenomorph to turn up, but we get Hicks, Dietrich, Hudson, Vasquez, Sergeant Apone, and then we get the ones who don't get as much. Pharaoh, Drake, Frost, Spunkmeyer, Crow, and Wiebowski are the others who don't get quite as much, but we do kind of see the battle from their point of view from certain points. But I like the fact that at least we got to spend some time with them and we got to find out more about them. And as the film goes on as well, as more and more get picked off, it doesn't just straight away turn into the Ripley show. We have moments, as I mentioned, Hudson gets his last stand. So does Vasquez and Gorman as well. They get their last stand in the event as well. So everybody gets a moment. It isn't just, well, let's pick these Marines off so we can make Ripley look cool. Ripley's looking cool whilst the Marines are getting their moments as well. So I appreciated that as well.
Yeah, and they get their last stands as well relatively close to the end of the film. Like, what you're saying, like, it takes almost half the movie to get into it. But, Hudson's, he and Vasquez, they make it quite really deep into the film. So it's not like, you've got the entire last hour is just, like you say, the Ripley show. Yeah, obviously, when we get to the big sort of final showdown, it's all about Ripley versus the Queen. But, you're right, they definitely get, and because we get that first sort of hour, in, 4 minutes, I think you said?
Pretty much,
around about that, we get all that time, or a lot of that time with these people before, the shit hits the fan, and you can see a bit more of their actual personalities coming through with it as well. So I think that made a big difference to this film, because if they just came in and been, your sort of bog standard soldier types, it wouldn't have worked at all for the film, and it would have been a big negative.
Yeah, well, I guess the only other, unless obviously apart from the cat, but the other main character, we haven't mentioned Newt, we will do, but is Burke, played by Paul Reiser. He reminds me of J.J. Abrams if he took his glasses off. I can't get it out of my head now. As soon as I saw it, I was like, this has ruined the film for me. Now I can just think of him on set thinking he's in a Star Wars or Star Trek film.
I'd never noticed that, but thank you.
Now I did, if he took his glasses off, it's Paul Reiser in this film. But Burke is great. He's always got his collar up. You can tell he's a company man. You can tell he's a slimy bastard. But he does so well, it kind of making you think at certain times of the film, like, is he the bad guy? Is he really trying to help? Or is he just a bastard? And as it turns out, he's a massive arse.
Yeah, because he goes along with Ripley at times. He sticks up for her as well at times as well, which is what, obviously, like you're saying, makes you sort of question it. And what I like as well is, his big betrayal at the end is actually quite low key, because we're too busy with the Xenomorphs. And I quite like the fact that even, the director is saying Burke doesn't matter. He's a little shit, and and that doesn't matter. And he gets killed off, and we all are very happy when that happens. Apparently, I read that even his real life mum said "good" when he died in the movie.
Wow.
So that just shows you how much of a dick the character of Burke is. But
what great performance then.
Absolutely. So yeah, I really love the fact that, that sort of whole and obviously he still gets his death scene and whatnot, but it's kind of low key compared to the fact that, because everyone else is trying to fight off the Xenomorphs, but yeah, I kind of like the sort of red herring in that with the is he, isn't he, because you do kind of play it, where you're like, you're automatically, very suspicious of him anyway. But there is moments where that suspicion, you think, all right, that he might be okay. And then he's not.
Then he uses an arse. His death is fairly unceremonious. He closes the door so nobody can get in, and then we don't necessarily see scenes of him kind of running around panicking and interspersed with the fighting. He closes the door, they try to get through, the fighting's carrying on, we have some last stands, they're trying to get through the door, and then we see Burke. He's looking for a door, he turns around, He dies. So it's fairly kind of like, whoa, okay. But I love that. I love that they didn't build up to the fact that he was going to die. They didn't make it, they didn't telegraph it as much as they could have done.
They didn't telegraph it. They didn't give the character more than the character deserved.
Yes.
And, it's instant karma, which we all love to see.
Great. It's brilliant, mate. Especially when we find out that Book was the one who sent the colonists to LV-426 in the first place. So Book sent them there. They've all been... they've all had a face hugger, a cuddle from a face hugger, and the whole issue now is Ripley's going to tell everyone in the company what Burke did, and Burke starts snivelling. He's like, I can't what he says now, but he says something to her, and Ripley just gives a great response back, and that's when Burke realizes, right, he's totally screwed now. The only way he can save himself is to ensure he's the only one who gets off this ship, and he traps. Ripley and Newt are trapped in a room, and there's a face hugger in there. And Ripley's waving at the cameras, Hicks, guys, come on. And Rise of the bastard turns off the monitor, doesn't he? Turns off the monitor, man.
Yeah, that's another great scene, though. Just the two of them in that room. There's two face huggers as well. The moment where where Newt is watching Ripley. She's trying to fight off this facehugger, and in the background, you just see this other one crawling over the back. And, facehuggers, I don't know about you, they give me the fucking willies.
Well, yes, they are.
Literally.
Genital-looking things, but no, they're perfect because they look awful. I mean, they look horrible, and they sound horrible as well. And they're such a horrible, and by horrible, I mean great, but a horrible design. It's so bloody effective, mate.
It's like it's spiders with human fingers, right?
And a tail.
And a tail. That's what they are. And a giant.
I hate spiders.
And a giant knob. Yeah, so
that's it. Exactly. It's just one big walking genital, is what it is. It doesn't matter which one. It's either. But the thing about that as well is Burke's quite willing to let Newt die in that moment. He doesn't care. I just realised it's only just dawned on me that because you're so fixated on Ripley, I hope Ripley survives that. Burke's also just, killing a child basically in that same moment. So that's when we know he's an absolute wrong one.
Yeah, I mean, what is she, 8 years old? Something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
She's young as well. It's not like she's a teenager. You could be like, yeah, teenagers are annoying. That's fine. You can kill them off. She's just a young thing, and she's been through a lot. Let's be real. The Newt's kind of gone through the mill, and spoilers for Alien 3, but we'll never forgive. We'll never forgive them for what they did in Alien 3 for that. I think that's the only reason why people hate that film, to be honest.
I think you may be right there, mate, because without digressing too much, the original screenplays for Alien 3, even with Newt and Hicks in, weren't particularly great anyway. So Alien, the one we got, was one of the better options. But then there's that at the beginning, and even Michael Biehn was so disgusted he wouldn't give his likeness, and I think he finally relented. But they had to pay him so much money to be able to use a picture of him, because he said, "No, I don't want anything to do with this. You've killed me off so unceremoniously. I'm not letting you even use my image." So they paid him a ton of money. So, and he's quite. I watched an interview of him, and he's like rubbing his hands in glee at the story, like I played him like a fiddle there. And good on him though. He loves the character,
and quite right too. He clearly put a lot into this movie, and he gives a great performance as well. Because I think that's another thing people think of horror movies. Wrongfully sometimes, quite wrongfully sometimes, and think, oh well, it's places where not very good actors go, or or action movies as well, like
make a quick buck.
Exactly, and some horror movies, specifically in the last few years, have had some sensational acting performances. But I think everyone there's no one in here you think, oh, that's bad acting. That just it's not here. Okay, some of the soldiers are pretty standard.
Well, they're pretty hammy, aren't they, at times?
Yeah, but it plays up to it. Everyone who matters to this film does a really good job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right. So I had a mouthful of tea then. Honestly, and I have, and this, I always sound so awful saying this, but sometimes I think kid actors are bloody awful. But I think
it's very hit or miss, isn't it? They're either great or they're terrible.
They can't all be Linda Blair, can they? But this is Carrie Henn's only acting credit, because she quit acting after this, and it's not a bad credit to have. But even Newt, even when she speaks as well, because she's very expressionistic. There's a lot of acting with her her eyes, and obviously her face is all grubby, so her face does a lot of the acting. But even when she is asked to speak, she's pretty good. There's only one line which I reckon I wish I'd done one more take on, and that's when she goes, "They're dead, all right. Can I go now?"
Yes. Every time. That's
fine, but you can tell that it isn't delivered with quite as much gusto as it could have been.
We found the one thing that we're going to criticize in this movie.
Newt, you little shit. You ruined the film. No wonder you quit acting.
I think the thing as well, especially with Newt as well, she screams a lot in this film as well.
Oh,
and it's that, high-pitched little girl scream. And that could have been so annoying so quickly. But for some reason, well, I don't know about you, but for me, that never happened. And it's because I think in between that, she's actually given a pretty good performance.
No, she is. And Sigourney Weaver and Michael Biehn as well, their characters, Hicks and Ripley. Obviously, Ripley, because she has that maternal bond, and we care so much about Ripley, and we can see Newt kind of coming around to as well, we now see them as like a surrogate mother and daughter kind of couple. So the two are sort of joined by that relationship, and Hicks could almost be like the dad in this. He certainly liked to be. So there's that kind of trio going on. And so we also come to care for Newt because she's, like I say, she isn't an annoying kid. She's seen her family die. She saw her dad with a face hug on his damn face, and she's had to live underneath in these tunnels because she knows there's monsters out there. It's not a case of a frightened kid who's a bit scared of the dark. This kid knows there's monsters out there. Has had to hide the whole time for her life. So we sympathise with her in that moment, and then at the end, which kind of kicks off the very end sequence when she's supposedly lost. She falls down the fan into the river, into the water. Sorry, and we think, oh no, she's lost. We're meant to kind of be like, oh no, and we are, but that's also and that's not. This isn't to discredit Carrie Henn whatsoever, but a lot of that is also down to how Sigourney Weaver reacts and Ripley, how she reacts to the idea that Newt might be gone. I think it's so well done, mate.
Yeah, because as well, there's no question in Ripley's mind, is there? There's no two ways about it. She's going to go save her. There's no even hesitation. There's a moment where you think Hicks is just trying to get her away, and obviously he is, but not from saving Newt. There's absolutely just no doubt in her mind, and then you get that whole sort of build up where she's like preparing to go and get her, and she's like loading up all the weapons, and it's like.
That's the badass scene I mentioned. It's so because she's literally like, "I'm not going. You keep the ship here. I'm going to go and get her." And she just gets tanked up with these weapons, and it's like, yes, she'll do that. It just shows. No, she's just the ultimate action hero. She's just quality, and the fact that, like I say, it's that maternal side of it as well. It's like there's this a perfect package in this action star.
Yeah, and even when once she goes down there, it would have been really easy, I think, the temptation for her to just go in and just start, kicking arse, shooting the place up and whatever else. I think the temptation to do that would be really easy, but she doesn't as well, which I think, they still show that restraint, and again, that's another scene that sort of almost harkens back to the original somewhat, because it's very tense, when she meets. When you realise that she's surrounded by all the eggs, and there's the queen, and you were talking about that hideous sack thing that's laying the eggs. It's very slimy. This is a very slimy movie.
It is horrible. It's basically icky, isn't it?
And even then, she still shows restraint. And there's almost a moment in that scene as well, where she's obviously threatening to set fire to all the eggs, as she backs off. And then that moment where one of them opens, and there's almost like a bit, I know xenomorphs don't have eyes, but there's almost like eye contact between her and the Ripley and the Queen, and she's like, just go, come on. Don't do it. I'm going to do it. And then she does it. And I love that. There's so much, in that scene, there's so much just non-verbal acting, and I love it.
Mate, when they're face to face and you see just how many eggs are there, but then you realise that from every crevice a xenomorph is lurking, and they're coming round the corner slowly. It's almost like Hellraiser when the Cenobites are just starting to converge. But you see the Queen alien. She kind of, like you say, there's no noise, but kind of gives the xenomorphs a look as if to say, right, back off, or else she's going to blow this up. I quite like that. I didn't find that any kind of Deus Ex Machina where it's like, oh, she's going to kill like the Queen would really care. Yes, the Queen would care, because I think a lot of the film is that kind of maternal bond, and it also with the Queen, she's like a bit more selfish with hers, whereas Ripley is a bit more selfless with hers. But honestly, mate, I love that. And the way she backs off, and that bloody the egg opens, and it is almost a case of, is she going to do it? And when I was watching it, I was just thinking, I could imagine the character of Ripley now thinking back to the events of the first film, thinking about how she didn't want to be here in the first place, how she's basically been conned into getting here, and how she's now kind of taken mothership of this young child, and all that's just gone through her mind, and she's just like, just F this, even as I'm staring down a grotesque alien mother, I don't care anymore. I'm in charge here. I love that moment, and the way she just absolutely just lays waste to all these eggs. It's so well, and then just for good measure, chucks a load of grenades in there as well, just to make sure. But then, the Queen. Dude, you can't just. You've got to make sure they're gone. You've got to reverse back over them, haven't you? And then the Queen obviously gets off, and that horrible. She breaks away from the sack and.
That's a sentence no one wants to hear, is it? Breaks away from the sack.
Exactly. Lockdown.
You know what? It's funny you say that. It reminded me another scene where Ripley's just a bit of a bad arse as well. It's quite early on, and it's just when we get that sort of big first confrontation between all the soldiers, when we lose like our secondary soldiers, and she takes ownership of the car that they're driving, or this space vehicle that they're driving, and one of the xenomorphs is on the car and trying to get her, and she like just brakes, no even hesitation, starts up and runs that dude over, and
crushes its skull,
and it has that really and. Throughout this film, they have that big sort of shrieking noise that the xenomorphs make, and I think that's just another great moment. And it shows as well that she means business when she's here. She's here to kill all of these things. Because of course, by this point as well, had we met? Had we met Newt at this point? I can't remember.
I don't know. Actually. Yeah, I think we had done. Yeah.
Okay, I just couldn't remember. But this.
Yes, we had. Yeah, because she was a jump scare moment, because that's when the squad's getting they're in the ship now, and they've got the motion sensors for the tracking sensors for the first time, and Newt kind of runs past the camera really quickly. So.
Oh, the motion sensors themselves might as well be a character in this film, too.
I love that.
Because there's nothing in this film builds the tension like those motion sensors. Just that beeping, slowly and slowly getting slightly quicker.
That's impossible. That means you're in the room with us. Look up. Oh, and that is great. That moment towards the end is great, where they've sealed the doors. They've sealed themselves in this room, thinking the aliens are outside, because the motion sensor's telling them they're approaching. So they sealed themselves in, and the movement's everywhere. And we get the shot. I think is of it's Hicks. Hicks. He uses his gun to look up, and then you get that great shot of this army of xenomorphs just coming towards him, and that's what that there is where the third act really just begins, and it just goes wild into overdrive from there. Yeah. And it's great, mate. That's where Hudson's last stand as well. And I love the fact that he went down fighting as well. He didn't get taken out like a punk. He went down fighting. Because
there's a moment in there where you think that's going to happen as well, isn't there? Because, he's sort of losing his cool a little bit, and he's lost his rag, and Hicks and Vasquez and Ripley are all starting to get a bit annoyed with him. But he pulls his shit together in the end, and goes down fighting like a champ.
Like a king. And the first time you see the motion sensors is that's around the hour 4-minute mark where things start to slowly ramp up, and I love that. And we get that sign up, multiple signals, they're closing. So as far as the characters know, what is what's closing? Ripley knows, and we know what's closing, but the characters don't. Apart from obviously before that, one of the dead colonists is in the wall, and a chest burster comes out, decides to turn up. And they set it on fire. So that's when it's let the games begin. We find out Lieutenant Gorman is just gormless, and the attack's an absolute disaster. It's a disaster, and then Ripley. That's when Ripley starts taking control as well.
Yeah, because she realizes that Gorman's useless. Let's be honest, he's useless, isn't he? He redeems himself a bit at the end, but up until this point, he's worse than useless.
Yeah, and I think she realises that not everyone is useless, but nobody knows what they're dealing with, including Riser, Gorman, and even the Marines until they start to become a bit more wise to what's happening. Ripley's the only one who knows what's happening. She has to take control in that moment. And that's where we see, because we saw it in the first film where she starts to take control of the situation. She does it here because, again, like I mentioned about the end, she knows exactly what she's dealing with. She's basically been conned into getting up there almost. And she doesn't want to, she wants all of these things to die. There's no way she wants to accompany Weyland-Yutani taking these back to Earth. And it's like a one-woman crusade against these xenomorphs. And I love it, man. I'm all for that. Bishop, we haven't mentioned Bishop as well. Bishop the android, because in the first film we had again Ian Holm, rest in peace. Mm-hmm. His android was a bit of a turncoat, but Bishop's one of the good ones.
He is. Although there's that moment again, isn't there, where you think he's left them, right at the end. That brief second, where she comes back up from the left and the ship's gone. And she's just there, I can't remember exactly what she says. She's just like, Bishop, you bastard.
Yeah, you bastard.
which I love. But no, you're right. And then, we're introduced with Bishop as well with the knife scene, the hand trick, which is a great scene. I love that scene so much.
It's just Bill Paxton sells it, and they did it on set as well. It's a real thing.
They did. Bill Paxton didn't know about it.
No, then I would be screaming as well if I was.
Everyone else knew about it apart from Bill Paxton.
That poor guy went through the ringer. Bill Paxton, he said, in an interview years later, he said that everybody got on so well off screen. Michael Biehn and Bill Paxton, they hung out a lot together. They all stayed in the Holiday Inn in Berkshire, which is not exactly. It's all real classy. They all stayed at nothing wrong with the Holiday Inn. They all stayed in the Holiday Inn in Berkshire, which is not far from here where I live actually. And he just said, look, they had such a good time. They all really got on well together, and the camaraderie of the Marines comes from that. And the way that Cameron shot certain scenes, he shot the scenes where we needed that camaraderie and bonding. He shot those at the end of production, so then they'd had even more time to get to know each other. And it's great, and there's some great behind-the-scenes stories. I won't go into all of them because there's so many, but it was really lovely to read, obviously, Bill Paxton and his memories on set and how everybody kind of came together in this kind of strange little family.
I think you can really see that, though, as well, because, you get that there's between multiple characters, obviously, there's some that are really explicit, like there's obviously some sort of really good friendship between Velasquez and Drake. But you also get everyone has a really good affinity for Apone, and he has almost that sort of fatherly bond with all of his soldiers, and so that definitely comes through, and I think that works quite well because that makes Gorman stand out even more. Just what an outsider he is. Outsider he is in this group.
I can't imagine he was at the bar after work with the guys, because that's how Cameron did it. He kind of kept everybody in their own little circles. Ripley and I don't know if it was Gorman. It's Ripley and definitely Newt, of course. They were kind of kept apart from the Marines during filming, so they would have, certainly initially, so they would have that outsider feel. So when they're on set bantering, and then Ripley turns up, obviously they're all acting. But the Marines have that real life bond as well, which I think again it shows really. It's little moments like that in the filmmaking process, which are sometimes overlooked, but they're so important, and it really does work. Because if you can nail your casting, and again, casting directors don't often get the credit they deserve. If you can nail the casting, then you can get everyone to bond as well. This is what you get. You get a film where, like you said, it could have been like Starship Troopers, which I love that film. It could have been a lot like that, and I dig that film, but. And
it's no aliens.
It's no aliens. And I've seen a few people say that if it wasn't for Sigourney Weaver, this film would just be B-movie trash. I don't agree with that. But with the introduction of the Marines, in hindsight, so many other films have taken the Marines and turned them into, like you mentioned, like cardboard cutout characters. Whereas here you believe that they've been on missions together. Hey, Vasquez, you ever been mistaken for a man? No. Have you? Great line, man. And the way everybody reacts, they are like a gang who have been there together and they've fought, they've seen things, man. And I think they captured that so damn well, man.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that the chemistry between specifically, like you said, you're talking about the soldiers there, but even I know they were kept apart at the beginning, but even Ripley and Hicks, who we obviously there's a lot of on-screen chemistry with them there. It just works, and I feel like you were saying there as well, how people are saying if you take Sigourney Weaver out of this, I think if you take almost any of them out of this, it becomes a much lesser of a movie. If Hudson's not there or if Hicks isn't there, like I think they're all, obviously there's maybe one or two that's obviously slightly more important, but I think they all have really great importance to how this movie actually comes across. Even the likes of Velasquez and Gorman and Burke, I think that they're all just as vital to this.
Yeah, the dynamic changes massively by taking one of them out, and it's a classic case of what if. You see some of the potential castings that could have been for this film, and you think, well, what if that person had been in, or what if that person had been in? And again, we will never know, but hindsight tells us that this was the right team. And like you say, you take one out, maybe the film wasn't quite as good.
Yeah, definitely. What do I know? Take one out and put someone else in. It might have been even better, but we're never going to know that. And I think obviously, I don't think it's a secret at this point that we quite like the final product that we got.
I think it's all right, mate. It's all right. It's no Alien Resurrection, but what is, huh?
It's no Halloween Resurrection.
Christ! It's not even a Season of the Witch, is it?
Oh no!
Yeah, Silver Shamrock. I like the opening of this film as well, mate.
It's
with the
Wayland Yutani.
The Wayland. Sing along. That's right. Look, Ian won't do the Bill Paxton impression, but he'll happily sing. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds very on brand for me, to be honest.
He hasn't even cracked any open at the minute, so God knows what it'd be like after a few tins, tenants. I like the opening of this scene, mate. Where you get we have the fake out opening with the cat. What's the cat called?
Jonesy.
Jonesy, of course, Jonesy. Where Jonesy's just hissing at Ripley, and you're like, oh, what's got up Jonesy's tail? And then Ripley's like, oh no, she starts convulsing. And you're thinking, what the bollocks on James Cameron to open and kill Ripley. And then it's obviously a dream sequence.
Oh, could you actually, like, speaking about what ifs, could you imagine if that was just the opening of this film?
It's a hell of a subversion, man, if that turns up. And Sigourney Weaver in it for like 3 minutes, it would be that would be a horror trope. The final girl comes back and then the next film she's just off quite quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Poor Jonesy, he went through it in the first film. Like, he deserves to be suspicious in this film.
Dude, if I'd seen, I have to think, Cats of 9 Lives, but I don't think I think one would be enough for that dude. Poor sod. He's seen more in his life than I'll ever see in mine. He's a cat.
Talking about, Vasquez and things, seeing some stuff. Jonesy's seen some stuff.
Dude, Jonesy, from the first film, Jonesy's the real hero of these films, I think.
He is. Stick with Jonesy and you'll survive. That's it. That's the moral of these stories.
Yeah, was Jones? And again, it's me saying I really quite like the film, but Alien 3, Jonesy's. Do we ever find out if the cat died?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd need to go and check. I'm not sure.
I don't remember them saying about a cat, because I know that a dog and then, depending on which version, a bison gets xenomorphed. But I know they don't. Imagine if Jonesy got it. That would have people rioting if they kill off Newton Hicks and then they impregnate Jonesy with a pissing alien. Oh,
a little, like Aliens versus Predator. We get a little cat alien crossover.
Jesus Christ!
Who's funding this movie?
Yeah. Who? We spoke about those on another show. NPM I do every week, and it was great to go back and watch them, because the first, actually, as I said on that show, the first one isn't as bad as I remember. AVP, it's not great, but it's fine. It's it's got a decent idea behind it. But the second one, Jesus, what the hell they went for with that? Honestly, they just went. Firstly, you can't see because it's so dark. And then
yes.
Whoever, I think it's the pretentiously named the brothers Strauss who directed it. I think they just tried to go too dark and too bad with the whole hospital scene and that. And,
I think as well. I think the problem though. I think you know what? Like, I love Predator, Arnold Schwarzenegger Predator, one of the greatest action / horror movies as well. I really Predator 2's all right. Danny Glover.
That's fine.
See, everything after that is total.
What about the Adrian Brody one? Because I didn't mind that.
I didn't hate it as much as I hated the newest one. I think is it The Predator or Predators?
I think it's The Predator with the Pred dogs.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, I didn't quite hate it as much as I hated the new one. But anyway, the point is, I think that's actually the Predators half of those movies.
Yeah.
that really sort of do it for me. I think you can chuck the xenomorphs in anywhere. They're always going to be creepy and they're always going to be, slimy and icky and devious and things like that. The Predators, it's a bit boring now.
No, you're right, and we'll get back onto Alien in a minute. But that was one of my big things about the Alien franchise, which I've mentioned before. Is obviously Ridley Scott's continuing it with the prequel series, and apparently he's desperate to do a third installment, so another one after Covenant. But I always ask people this, and I shall ask a question of you: is what can they do? Because obviously Fox/Disney now want this franchise to keep going. They're releasing Alien Fire's team, which looks quality. They've got the Alien TV series coming out, which should hopefully be badass. But what can they do to make the films relevant again? How can they shake things up so it isn't just people go into space or a deserted planet and aliens hunt them?
I don't know. I think surely the only thing left to do is to have them on Earth, right?
Well, I think that was where...
Was that where AVP was kind of going, wasn't it?
It was AVP was going to go there, which then kind of makes me think, well, hold on, wasn't... They were there all along, weren't they? They were there fighting in Antarctica the whole time, and Ripley's like, don't let them get to Earth, but they've been there for thousands of years, so kind of makes the first film a bit pointless. I think...
I don't know where you go with it, to be honest with you. Obviously, like you were saying, Disney's got all these big, grand plans for what they've... for what they want from this franchise. I'm not sure. I don't think, this sounds a very pretentious thing. I just don't think you're ever going to recreate what you had with those first two movies. I think you'll still probably get some really quality films. I don't think we're ever going to get anything that's going to be as good as Alien or Aliens. And I think that's always a tough thing to have to live up to as well. They've got some serious work on their hands. I don't mind the sort of Prometheus Covenant movies. Mm-hmm. I think they're pretty solid. And the Covenant. I think I saw Covenant not that long ago actually, and it's good. But again, it's not Alien or Aliens, and
exactly. And you never will do. I mean, look, Terminator and Predator have both got this same issue, and Bill Paxton was killed in all of those franchises as well, actually. An Alien, a Terminator, and a Predator.
He is the glue that holds all these franchises together.
It certainly was Game Over Man in every one of those films. But
Game Over Man!
Yes, we got there! Game Over Man! You want to put her in charge? I think Alien 5, the original Alien 5 script that Ridley Scott wanted to do, I believe, was going to be set on Earth. Weyland-Yutani had finally got them to Earth. And I can't remember what was going to happen, but that was with that kind of infamous, within the genre, famous concept art of Ripley kind of made up as a xenomorph. But it turns out it was armor she was wearing, but the concept art looked creepy and great. It probably looked a bit stupid in real life, but he desperately wants to do another film. He wants to continue this, but again, I'm no screenwriter, and obviously I'm not a director, so I haven't got the answers, but I just want to know what they could do. I
think it all depends as well on whether or not Sigourney Weaver would come back as well. I think that's a big thing. She came back for the video game. Yes. I don't know if you played Alien Isolation.
Scared the shit out of me.
I literally just played it like a couple of weeks ago. I was streaming it, and to say I was cocking my pants every 5 minutes would have been an understatement.
I got about 20 minutes through, and I have no shame in saying I had to stop it. That was 3 years ago, and I haven't put it back on since. I was terrified of it.
This was a week ago, and it took me 9 hours to complete it, and I sat through all 9 hours of it. It was hell. But obviously, and then she came back for that, and obviously that's set around her daughter, so it's obviously set in between one and Alien and Aliens. I almost said 1 and 2 there. That's sacrilegious.
No, Alien 1. Come on. I haven't got you on this show for those kind of mistakes.
Amateur.
Yeah.
So that's obviously set between Alien and Aliens, but I don't know if there's something you could go with that storyline as well. There's a lot you could do.
There is. It's just how it all comes down to who's going to helm it. Could you could we have a world where we have a race of alien, they've weaponized the aliens and we're having to fight against a weaponized alien, or because they tried that in Resurrection.
Wasn't that as well what they tried to do in the newest Predator?
Yeah, actually, Christ, they've done that as well.
So that again, I get it's there's a lot that's been done at this point as well. Shocking that cinema's only been around for however many years. There's quite a lot of it's already been done, but I don't know. I'm sure they'll come up with something. I hope we don't just get more aliens in space. Although I'd probably still watch it. I would like I'd like to see something a little bit fresh.
Yeah. I honestly don't know, mate. But listen, if they give us aliens in space, which they tried to do with Covenant, and parts of that film were decent, and some of the ideas in it were quite good. It's just we know what's coming as an audience now, and that's the problem. The audience are there, same as when in the 80s people would go and watch A Nightmare on Elm Street or the Friday the 13th films. The audience are there for the bad guys. They're there for Freddy and Jason. In any new Alien film, that's why Prometheus did so poorly of the critics and the fans, because it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. They thought it was going to be Alien. And there's going to be lots of aliens. Yeah,
because people hear Alien prequel, and you're like, oh yes, excellent, more xenomorphs, more this, more that, and obviously that's not what they got. Right. Like you said, more aliens in space, I'm sure would be great. Probably still better than Jason in space, but
yeah, that was crap, wasn't it?
But yeah, you're absolutely right. It depends who's in charge. It depends if they can get some of the cast back. It depends how original and how fresh the actual setting is. I mean, that sort of alien atmosphere and alien aesthetic is, I think, pretty key. And I think that is absolutely going to run through whatever they do. And I love that aesthetic, but they need to change some of the parts.
Yeah, you're never going to please everyone, that's for sure. So there will always be members of the diehard who maybe have read the comics or whatever, and they want a certain way, and they're probably not going to get that because they've got to be able to give the mainstream audience what they want as well. So there's that, and as Prometheus showed, the mainstream audience wants aliens, so that can get boring quite quickly. So, which is why it's amazing that Aliens managed to be as good as it was, because the novelty had worn off. In the marketing for Alien, they never showed the xenomorph, so the first time you saw it was in cinema. You're going into Aliens knowing what you're going to get, but they twisted it up with the Marines and the action. But I don't know how they could do that again. Again. Maybe the future is in the TV series. Who knows?
I think as well, what was like with this movie, with Aliens, they didn't test screen it at all either. So There was no, aside from, obviously who was filming it, the cast and the crew, there was no one who really knew what was actually going to expect. There was no one who'd gotten sneak peeks. None of the press had gotten sneak peeks of it. They didn't test screen this at all. And I think that also worked in its favour. And like you say, the cat is long out of the bag when it comes to these movies. So I think that's something that definitely helped this film.
And they had to change it up, and James Cameron did a hell of a job. I don't think any other cool moments other than obviously the main ending itself.
Well, I actually have a question for you, and it's not specifically about aliens, but obviously this is a sequel. And is this the best ever sequel?
Dude, I was going to ask you that. So is this, man, it is. This film is always asked in that conversation, because you get things like, at the time, like The Empire Strikes Back, is it the best sequel of all time? Aliens, Terminator 2, are they the best sequels of all time? Jaws 2, you get those kind of...
But you've got, it's I tried to list a few before I came on, because I thought this was going to come up, and if you didn't bring it up, I was going to bring it up anyway. And I had T2, I had Empire Strikes Back, I also had some more. I had an old one, Bride of Frankenstein, down.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I also had a couple of more modern ones. I had The Two Towers, Lord of the Rings, I've got Dark Knight, and those are my sort of... I know a load of people always say Godfather 2, but my shame is that I've never seen a Godfather movie. So
I think The Godfather's a good. I think The Godfather's a great film, but it's not one of my favourite films of all time. And The Godfather 2 is also a great film, but they don't hit me in that way. But as a film fan, yes, that probably is one of the best sequels of all time, given how it built on the first film. But it's not one I go back to watch. So personally, I would put others ahead of it. The films you mentioned, though, I can't look past. I'm desperately thinking off the top of my head, are there any? There's none. We've had good sequels, but none which hit the level of they're good and are actually better than an already iconic first film. And that to me is what it is, because you can have a sequel to a bad film, and you can have a sequel. The first film was crap. A sequel comes along, like the new recent Ouija films or Ouija. First film wasn't great. The second one was alright actually, but I wouldn't call that one of the best sequels ever because it improves. but so those films you mentioned, though, I think they're your gold standard, all of them, and they cover different genres as well, which is what I quite like. It's up there, mate. It's up there. I think a lot of people would shout Empire Strikes Back, and I may do as well, but because that also subverted the expectations from the first film. But God damn, this is such a good film, isn't it? It's just such a good film, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely, there's 5 or 6 movies like we've been talking about that easily, like if someone said that's the best sequel, you'd be like, yeah, okay, I can see, I'll go with that. But yeah, you're right. That's because Alien, like we say, is so iconic, and it's so well loved, specifically as well by horror fans. Obviously we're talking about how Alien's slightly like more overtly horror than Aliens is, but it's so well loved, and to take that, to build upon that, and to do both, they've paid homage to the original. They've got so many elements of the original in there. They've still got that really tense. It's still quite claustrophobic at times, but they've also blown it up completely. We've went from 1 xenomorph to 100 xenomorphs. We've got the Queen, which we didn't get in that first movie. There's so it's gone all the way to 11, but still maintains so much of that original film as well in that atmosphere. And for me, that's why this will always be one of the best sequels of all time.
Yeah, and I think you've almost hit the nail on the head there as well. Is that a lot of the problem with sequels is sequelitis. They go bigger and they go badder, but it doesn't always make it better. Just expansion, literal expansion of making everything bigger, doesn't make a good film. And Aliens does do that. It does make things bigger in terms of in terms of the personnel. We've gone from having workers to like tooled up Marines. We haven't just got 1 or 2 xenomorphs. We've got loads of them. But it still takes place in a fairly isolated environment. You've only got a couple of locations. Yes, they're big and sprawling, but they're not exactly like open plan. They're not big. You still got the same claustrophobic feeling as Alien, but somehow it feels a bit bigger, and it's building to that big mother of a finale. Which the finale in Alien is great. Obviously, compared to this, is a lot more low key. It doesn't make it any worse, though. But when they go bigger in Aliens, James Cameron knows when to play his hand, and he knows when to pull back and be like, no, we could have like 10 xenomorphs in here at once, but that's overkill. It's not conducive to a good story. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. But then we get that big old ending, man. And this is for me, is it the best sequel of all time? It's one of the best 3 sequels of all time. I'm not sure I can rank them, but if you had to ask me for 3 of them, it would be The Empire Strikes Back, Aliens. Oh, would it be The Dark Knight, or would it be Terminator 2? It'd be one of those, but this is definitely up there, mate. The finale of this film, from the moment we have those final stands of Hudson and then Vasquez, and they're all dropping like flies, and then Ripley goes back for Newt, and let's not forget, dude, that amazing shot of Newt in the water, and then behind her, the xenomorph just literally like unfolds behind her in like this majestic beauty, and it's just like the most horrifying visual, and it's incredible. Like this innocent kid with a doll's head, and then behind her is the most horrible looking monster you can imagine, and it's so well shot. They
do that twice in this movie as well, because it happens to one of the soldiers earlier on in the movie, when they've got like infrared vision on or something, and they can't see them, and behind one of the soldiers, you think it's just the wall, And then the xenomorph unfolds. Maybe not quite as impactful as the one you're talking about with Newt, because you've obviously got, her being a small innocent child in that. But they do it twice. They hit that note twice, and it's like, yeah, we've hit that note first, but wait until later because we're going to hit it again, and it's going to be even better.
Yep. And the way it's shot, the way the scale, the stakes, because who knows what they're going to do. We're in the finale. The Marines who we've had the entire film with are going. They're gone. Newt is left. Is this going to be the big kind of like WTF moment? Are they going to have the xenomorph take out Newt? Obviously, she doesn't. But the Ripley going back and being a badass. That moment, of course, Ripley's going through the ship. What she got? A gun with a motion sensor on it as well. She's marking her way. And Newt, oh God, Ripley shoots a face hugger. Oh God! And then when she sees the Queen, and the Queen is massive, and the Queen is pissed off. And from then on, it is like, and how you so perfectly described the scene with like the two mothers and then the eggs and what Ripley does to those. From then on, it's just a masterclass in the execution of tension. The elevator scene is just great, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, and it'd be really easy again for those scenes to be drawn out just a little bit too long, but they don't overstay their welcome. But they also don't feel like that it's over in a flash as well. One of the really nice attention to details that I like about this, so when she goes back down in the lift, and it's a 15-minute countdown, until the place that's actually 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes to the second when
I love that when
it actually explodes. And I love the little detail like that. So, it draws it out just a little bit. And again, those attention to details like we're talking about, like when she comes out, when the door's open and she's in the machine, it's not just doors open, line. It's doors open, take 3 steps forward in this slow-moving machine, then deliver the line. So, like you're saying, James Cameron absolutely knew exactly just to hold back enough so that when he did go for it, it was amazing. And that whole final sequence, that last half hour, is possibly the greatest half hour in cinema history.
That's it. You're talking about great sequels, and all of those sequels you mentioned have great moments in them. Like all of them have great moments. You get The Empire Strikes Back has great moments throughout. Then you get possibly the greatest twist in film history with I Am Your Father. The Dark Knight has great... sorry, spoilers. The Dark Knight has great moments littered throughout. The ending's good as well. But this final sequence is just incredible. And the elevator scene, but they're obviously Ripley's trying to get in the elevator. And she's like me at a car park. She's going, come on, goddammit. When I see someone's about to get into the elevator, I'm like pushing the button, like, don't let him in with me. And the Queen finds them, and then they get up to the top. But we know that the Queen's thought, well, hold on. Elevator, ding ding, because Ripley was in such a hurry. She's pushed all the buttons. We know the Queen's in the elevator. We see it slowly coming up, and it's like, oh no! I wish they'd shown a shot of like the alien Queen in the elevator with elevator music, and they're sort of like looking around. And then when the doors open, she's like, it would have been great. But just attention to that, because we know that she's the Queen's in that. The Bishop is supposedly gone. He's fucked off with the ship. How are they going to get? There's 2 minutes left before the station implodes. How do we get? Is this it again? We don't know. There's going to be a third film. So is this the big sacrifice at the end of the film? And obviously Bishop turns up, and we think they get away, don't we? We think there's a twist. There's a double ending. And we rewatching the film the other night when the ship flew away. I was thinking, hold on, I'm sure there was another battle. I'm sure Bishop gets ripped in half. It must be a different film. I forgot about it, man.
Yeah, no, I was the same when I watched it. Even like just a few years ago, I would watch it and I'd be like, oh, I forgot that happened. Can I just say, sorry to take us off, that scene where half a Bishop is just being sucked out the door and he's half his body just flying. That's hilarious to me. I was wetting myself.
And he's just there with half his body, and he manages to catch Newt still. What a hero.
I know, what a legend, honestly. Puts Ian home to shame. But no, you're right. I love the red herring of the ending as well. But I also love because it's very much as well a callback again to the original, because that happens in the first movie too, not to obviously in exactly the same settings. But in that the xenomorph is hiding sort of in the escape pod, I think it is in the first one, and And,
dying in the escape pod, isn't it, pretty much?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I love that there's that sort of little callback as well. And that it got me better in the second one than it did in the first one.
Mate, they don't hold back. Yeah, he's an android, but it's absolute. That's one of my most enduring memories of this film from seeing it as a kid. Was when I first saw this film. I hadn't seen all of it, so all I saw was Bishop being impaled and this white shit that's flying out of his mouth and his stomach, and obviously I didn't know. I thought it was a human, and I thought it was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. This is a kid. It must have been on TV or something. I must have switched over, but and then we know that it's he's an android, but they still make it like ultra violent and graphic, even though he's an android. He doesn't hold back, and I love it. All this white gunk spewing out. Then we see him get torn in half, and then when he's on the floor, you can see his guts, the wires and cables inside him, which are made to look like guts. It's really quite graphic for an android death.
Well, it's when you think about it, it's probably one of the most graphic deaths in the whole movie, because a lot of them happen off camera as well.
Yeah.
Burke happens off camera, all the soldiers kind of happen off screen, and, we see people getting dragged away and things like that. Velasquez and Gorman, they obviously kill themselves, so a lot of them, we don't actually get to see the big sort of xenomorph death. And like you say, they obviously go for it here with the android. So, and again, I think that's another example of just showing that restraint throughout the rest of the movie. And then when it comes to, we think we've had the final showdown, but we've not really. So to kick off the final showdown, here's the most gruesome death of the entire film.
Yeah, it's a bloody android. But I didn't mind the airlock thing, because, these aliens, how are you going to kill the damn queen? You've got to find a way, and the airlock comes into it again. Okay, could it be derivative? Maybe, but this is the queen alien, and the third film obviously goes that way as well. Resurrection, goes that way, but with that weird hybrid, weird alien that gets sucked through the hole in the wall and whatever. But I think the final sequence in this film is one of the best I've seen. It's a mix of tension and exhilaration. It's a kind of like, I'm sitting there clenching and things I didn't know I could clench, but at the same time, I'm absolutely exhilarated by what I'm watching. It's the strangest sort of sensation. And even though I know what happens at the end, well, clearly I didn't because I forgot about Bishop, but even though I know they all survive, then it's still kind of just like, you get swept into the hopelessness of the situation, and then, Bishop, Hicks and Nuke get put into cryo-sleep, and, that's going to go well for them. But I honestly think it may be... I'd love to... Anyone, listeners, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on whether this is one of the best final thirds, final sequences of all time, and where this stacks up in the history of sequels. But I can't look past it. There's so many great moments just in that end sequence, dude.
Yeah, no, I'm completely in agreement with you. The whole end. We've talked about this entire film. This entire film is great. Yeah, this is a 2.5 hour long movie. It never feels like it at any stage. I'm sure we will have both seen movies that are an hour and a half and feel about 6 hours long.
Yep.
So for this one, 2.5 hours long movie, never overstays its welcome. Even though that first hour is more just tension building, it's world building, you're establishing characters, that's not overstaying its welcome. It's just masterfully done, and that final sequence is just the culmination of the 2 hours that have come before it. We've had people dying off camera from the xenomorphs, we've had the confrontation with the queen, we've had, Burke and his death, and all the soldiers getting their comeuppance, and then you just have this big final moment where Ripley's like, you've taken everyone else from me, you're not taking Newt, and it's just done to perfection.
Yep, and that's kind of summed up the film. We mentioned, was there any other positives you wanted to mention about the film?
Oh,
what about the score? You found the score of this?
Yeah, the score is something that I didn't really pay a lot of attention to, if I'm honest. I feel like sometimes if you don't really notice the score very well, that can sometimes mean that it's actually doing a really good job, because it's complementing. I think the score complements this movie really, really well. And one of the big things about the first one that I really liked was the score. I think it really aided in that sort of tension building. But it goes back to, having at moments, as I spoke about earlier about the lack of sound and music during that sort of big final scene. And I think that also gets counted as part of the score, even though there's nothing there. So yeah, I mean, it's just another aspect of this movie that I think works particularly well. And again, the temptation would have been to go over the top, really cheesy with it, and have your sort of big classic action type score. And I think they managed to just sort of restrain themselves enough in this film.
Yeah, like you say, sometimes not noting the score can be a good thing. Sometimes it can be a bad thing, especially if the score is meant to be noticed. But you hit the nail on the head. The score here complements the scenes. It's not there to direct you and how you should be feeling at any moment. It's there to complement what's happening. So, what Alien does well is it's kind of like an industrial sounding score where it sounds more just like factory noises at times, like there's like chains clanking and a sound bed of music more than anything, rather than an actual score. Alien 3 score's got some good moments in it as well. It's the first one as well, but it's just like the eeriness that the score brings. It just sort of cuts through. It's a bit of seasoning to what's going on screen. And I don't want a big score in these films. And like you mentioned about the finale, I don't want a kind of like urgent, chaotic score at the end, kind of a big with strings everywhere, to kind of elevate what's going on, because it absolutely didn't need that. So the score, I think the score's fine. I'm just trying to think of anything else. I mean, the film looked good. It nominated for enough Oscars to say that. Why there's mental, man.
Just a couple. The Oscars still overlooking horror movies in 2021.
Well, dude, and I always say on this show, look, I love the Oscars. I'm a big fan of the Oscars, but I also know that not everybody holds them in such high regard. And just like RT, which I am obviously a fan of, but it's not the be all and end all. And if a film does or doesn't win an Oscar, it's not the be all and end all. But in some cases, it's nice for the acknowledgement. So I'm so glad Aliens, even way back when, was acknowledged to this extent. And Best Actress nomination. But yeah, in recent years, I mean, obviously, mine turns to, for me, it's always Toni Collette. So, and it's everybody. It's almost like the go-to argument now. Toni Collette should have won the damn award, let alone be nominated.
Yeah.
But a lot of horror performances, look at Elizabeth Moss in The Invisible Man. They're just overlooked. And genre flicks sometimes do have a bad rap. Sci-fi as well, action, comic book films have the same issues as well. But horrors seems to have, it's a huge thing when you think, Get Out got nominated for how many awards? Wow. When really there are other good films out there. Get Out's great. There are other good films which deserve to be nominated for more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that whole sort of thing, when Parasite won the Oscar. I know we're getting a bit off track here, but when Parasite won, you had a lot of people being out there saying, well, you know what, there's a lot of Korean cinema that's as good, if not better than this, but that's just the one that sort of caught the imagination. And it was kind of the same with Get Out. Get Out's a great film, but there's so many others that are just as good or better than, the Oscars, a little bit of a self-plug here, the Oscars constantly overlooking horror movies. It's why we started up our own horror awards.
Do it, man.
Last year. We did it. We
I was about to say, did it, but that's what I mean. Like, do it. If nobody else is going to do it, then take it upon yourself and you have done.
I wanted to, start this thing where...
I voted last year. I voted for Elizabeth Moss and The Invisible Man.
Ah, good. And neither of them won.
Shows how much my vote counted. Bastard. Blame blogging.
They were up against some very good films.
Of course. It's a tough category, man. Genre, sorry.
Absolutely, and there's always really good, especially in the last sort of 10 years or so. Yes. I've had this argument with a lot of people on social media, as one does, about the last 10 years. I think we're going through a real sort of golden patch of horror movies in the last sort of decade. Everyone always sort of goes, oh, the 80s was the pinnacle. The 80s was not the pinnacle. The 70s was the pinnacle.
The 60s got that turned the gas on and the simmer started. And by the 70s, it was boiling over. It's great. And then the 80s is great. The aesthetic and the type of films, a lot of people, it means a lot to a lot of people because of the visuals and the time of their life, and they're fun films. But
people think of things like Dream Warriors and the sort of hair metal and that, and that's there's some great films in there like that. But
the 90s the 90s actually, though I don't hold them as high as the others, It has got some of the best though, like Scream, Silence of the Lambs, for example. I mean, great horror, like classic horror films.
Candyman is
Candyman,
one of my favourites of all time. You know, I love that movie
so looking forward to that follow-up. I was really bummed out when that was pushed back, but I would like to see that near DaCosta's film at the cinema.
Yeah,
the Naughties were just, they were very much a victim of the times. You can't watch one of those films without realising exactly where you are in time.
Yeah, I think the biggest films were Saw,
obviously Hostel for its infamy, and Saw, obviously it's spawned the franchise. And because you got a lot of those crap like 13 Ghosts and I Know What He Did Last Summer just continued going, and it was all those kind of just like naff. Like it was the diet. Like Scream brought back the slasher, albeit in a satirical kind of way, but then it kind of carried on and people were just trying to make a quick buck off cheap slashers, but they were rubbish.
People just tried to, like you say, they're trying to cash in on that. Scream tried to cash in on itself and failed absolutely miserably, in my opinion.
No, I did like the fourth one. It was okay.
Oh, okay. We'll finally disagree on that.
I didn't mind the fourth one. Again, it didn't. The first one is boss. I always get mixed up between the second and third one. Which one's the worst one? I think
the third one is for me the worst. Well,
okay.
The fourth one for me is the worst one.
Here we go.
The third one is the worst out of those two. But yeah, you know, like that whole, like you say, I Know What You Did Last. They were just trying to cash in and something, and it's the same as the whole sort of sequel argument we're having about, you know, when you're trying to cash in on something that's already iconic, that's already great. You're never. It's going to be have to go some to really win people over.
Well, look how the Alien franchise has. Some people say it hasn't. Most people would say it has suffered, but I mean, in terms of the last 10 or 11 years, the resurgence of horror, as a respected genre, I think, you know, coincides with the A24 studio starting as well, because a lot of good horror films have come from the studios of A24. I mean, you've got things like obviously The Witch. The Blackcoat's Daughter, which is an A24 film international. I think that's a wonderful film. It doesn't get spoken about enough, and it's a great horror film. And then obviously Blumhouse. Blumhouse are great when they get it right.
I think Blumhouse as well. I think because they're making so many movies on a budget as well, you know, they're not pumping tens of millions of dollars into these films.
No.
You know, they're 2 or 3 million budgets here, and which is not a lot. Let's be real.
But if you can make 10 times that back with like 20 million, then you're laughing.
Blumhouse is an absolute, you know, horror machine just now in terms of money making as well. But, you know, like you're saying, specifically, you know, over those Ari Aster movies, you got Hereditary and Midsommar.
Jordan
you know,
Peele.
I know they're very divisive. Personally, I love them. Like you were saying about The Witch. There's The Lighthouse.
Of course,
It Follows.
the Robert Eggers films. Yeah,
you know, there's some really, really great stuff out there.
And they're the ones. And I liked It Comes at Night, and I know a lot of people weren't as hot on that, but I liked it because these are films which aren't. I like a horror film with a bit of atmosphere. Don't get me wrong. I love to sit down with a beer and pizza and watch a slasher film as much as the next person. I love it, but I love that horrible kind of unease you get when you're watching a really good horror film, like you mentioned, like The Lighthouse.
Yeah,
where it's more like, what the fuck is happening? And it's the unease of not knowing anything. And I've seen enough of our Pats wanking to like not know what's going on here. But and again, it's not just A24, but they're the first ones I come to mind. The studio started in 2010, and a lot of their films get critically well received, and they're more divisive with the fans, because I think a lot of fans, you know, they go into a film like The Witch and maybe expect a bit more of a witch, whereas what they get is something a lot more low key, but 10 times more scary, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think a lot of them is just the storytelling as well. Like it's probably very relatively straightforward to make a bog standard slasher movie these days, but you know these have really good storylines. They have great character development. I mean, look at Midsommar, for example. That movie is batshit insane. It's insanity. Nothing happens in that movie, but it is insanity, you know, for 2.5 hours. So I think the storytelling over the past few years has been excellent.
That's a good show. There has been a resurgence in the craft of horror, and look, we still get the like you say, they're very quick to make, very cheap to make ones. I'm not a fan of the Happy Death Day films at all, but I know a lot of people love those films, and we're still getting those kind of films. So if you like those films, they're still coming.
Yeah, I mean, we're still getting more from the Conjuring universe. We're still getting more Insidious movies. You know, James Wan is still going to go out there and make hundreds of millions of dollars on his, what is, in my opinion, generally cheap thrill type movies. And if that's what people are interested in, and that's what their idea of a good time, then good on them. Personally, I like a bit more storyline, but you know, people can like what they like.
I like a bit more substance. At the risk of sounding like a snob, I like a bit of substance with any film, though.
A snob? Never.
Never. As my southern English Surrey tones would say otherwise. But no, I like any film. I've spoken about this on loads of shows and that, but even with like sci-fi or whatever, especially action as well, right? I need to give a damn about what's happening. I need to give a damn about the characters. Otherwise, I'm out. And I have a problem with certain slashers get me sometimes. But you know, if the slasher genre, you're not meant to feel for their characters. You're meant to be like, how cool were they when they died? Yeah. But some slashers, you don't even get that. So I need a bit of depth in it. But I wanted to ask you then, completely off before we go back to Aliens, is of the upcoming horror films, if you could only watch one, what are you picking?
Right. I know we've bashed on 2 of the movies in the franchise already, but I absolutely am just the biggest Halloween fan that you could ever, and I loved 2018 Halloween.
I like that a lot, mate. I think this is gonna, you may even hang up, but I could watch that over the original. And I know you love that first. Your favourite film, is it? Yeah,
that's always down as my favourite. And in fairness, I now cite Halloween 2018 as my second favourite. So
you kind of get me there.
I definitely get you. I think they really sort of just took that franchise back to its roots, you know, and they stripped away so much of the unnecessary plot lines and other faff in that movie and took it back. So I'm really excited for Halloween Kills. But aside from that, I'd probably say Night of the Costas Candyman. I'm so stoked for that.
Same, I think that would be my choice. Because everything I've seen looks great. I love the poster, the simplicity, but everything I've seen of the marketing material looks great. And also, we've also dumped on a few of the films, but I'm morbidly intrigued by Scream 5. I just want to know why they're bringing it back.
I know I've said I hate everything after the first one, but I'll still go and watch it, you know. And another franchise as well. I'll go see Spiral, the new Saw movie
from the Book of Saw. But I'm interested in Chris Rock's behind it, and Chris Rock's a talented dude, but he's not. You wouldn't put the two together, would you?
No, you've got Samuel L. Jackson in that movie as well.
Oh, motherfucker's going to be there, yeah.
So. Yeah, I think I'm more just interested to see what they've actually done with it rather than anything else.
Yeah, there's a lot of films I'm looking for, or directors I'm waiting on now. I'm waiting on Jordan Peele's new film. I'm waiting on Ari Aster. I'm waiting on Alex Garland's new film. I'm waiting on certain actors I want more, directors I just can't wait for.
Didn't Ari Aster say he was going to make a 4-hour comedy?
He did, but I think he's retracted on that now. I can't remember what it is.
God.
Yeah, thank Christ. I mean, we've got Justice League coming out in a few days, guys. We're getting that, but there's a few directors I can't wait to see what they do next, and a few of the ones you've mentioned are some of them. Oz Perkins, I like Oz Perkins a lot as well. Wasn't as much a fan of Gretel and Hansel, but I still love his visual style.
Oh yeah, like that's the thing as well. I think there just seems to be there's something for everyone these past few years. You know, there's all these different styles of movies as well, and then I think there's just something I think for everyone to look forward to, whether it's big franchise movies or whether it's, you know, little independent films. You know, independent cinema is really sort of booming just now as well, I think. There's, you know, Terrifier 2 is another one that I'm really excited for.
I forgot all about that, man.
Yeah, and I love Terrifier. I've actually been trying to hit up David Howard Thornton and been sliding into his DMs.
Do it, man. Do it.
But yeah, so another one. So yeah, like there's absolutely so much. And as well, obviously, because of the pandemic, you know, we've got this sort of concertina of movies in the next couple of years. So I am anticipating an amazing couple of years.
No, and we've also had that host last year, let's not forget, but and what I always find exciting about the horror, any genre, but especially horror, is that in about 3 months, there'll be a film that comes out which, you know, seemingly went under the radar, and it may end up being the best horror film of the year. It happens an awful lot, whether it's a Shudder film, whether it's an independent film or something. It just comes out of nowhere.
Ready or Not was one of them for me.
Ready or Not was one of them.
Yeah,
Host was, and speaking of it, Host was one of those as well for me.
Absolutely. Like, I'd never heard of these movies before, and obviously, we're both people who kind of keep up with what's coming and what's to be expected, and those were two movies for me that went completely under the radar and ended up being two of the most talked about movies of the year. I mean, Host is still, like, I spoke to Emma from that movie.
She's my favourite.
By the way, she is just the sweetest human being.
She comes across as very nice. I remember, really bad, but I remember, as Death by Pod would do, I remember saying, my favourite was Emma because she's hot. And then Jed Shepherd, the producer, listened, and he off air was like, we heard what you said and we found it quite funny. I thought, now they know what I think. And then I saw you interviewing. I was like, I'm not writing anything in the comments. I'm saving myself. But I'm glad to hear. I have listened to the episode because, all jokes aside, I do think she was wonderful in the film, and it's a great film. If you haven't seen Host, guys, it's like 58 minutes. Honestly, do yourselves a favour.
Once a spare hour one evening, and people will not regret it. I know people who aren't big fans of the sort of genre. They aren't big fans of the things like Unfriended, and I wasn't a big fan of Unfriended either, to be honest. And there's people out there who maybe don't like supernatural sort of style movies, but this one, it's really, really well written, and the fact that they did it all in lockdown as well is pretty genius. And I think they didn't they make it for like doesn't Rob Savage say they made it for like a $5?
It was literally made like a packet of crisps and a $5, a couple of favours later. Honestly, but you wouldn't know, but you'd never notice. You'd never know. It's so well done. Aliens is a good film, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just forgot about that.
It's all right.
The thing is, of all those films you've mentioned,
Aliens is still better.
Aliens is, but that, again, we've had 30 years to sit on Aliens. I hope some of these films you've mentioned will look back in 30 years and think, you know what, that holds up. I
think we will. I think a lot of these films, I mean, don't get me wrong, there will definitely be ones that will not even take that long, that will look back in 5 or 6 years and you'll think, oh, that wasn't actually so good. But I'm absolutely certain that some of these movies that even just the few that we've mentioned, will definitely
practical effects as well in a lot of them. In the noughties, you had a lot of crap CGI, which was dated then, and now obviously it ain't great. Whereas now, when you do get CG, for the most part, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Sometimes, of course, you get some janky stuff, but a lot of films are harking back to practical effects now, because I don't know if they just realised it looks better. But even Aliens is practical, or it's stop motion or miniatures.
Yeah, I mean, I think people do. It does just look better, Even not great practical effects look better than most decent CGI.
There's a charm to them, isn't there?
There is, and I think filmmakers as well have also realised that it sort of endears their movies a little bit more to their audience, more specifically, their hardcore fans.
Yeah. I've got nothing against CGI. I love a good bit of CGI, especially when it's augmented and you can't tell. And look, CGI has its place. Of course, it has done things to cinema which would never have happened without it.
And there is a lot of work that goes into CGI as well.
Jesus, man, yeah.
People think that that films are taking the easy option. They're not really. Like, there's a big whole team of people behind CGI, but unfortunately, the end result just never. Often just doesn't. It just doesn't compare to good practical effects.
Yeah, no, spot on, mate. So, and like I said, Aliens uses a lot of practical effects within their budget, and they do it well. So, one more then? Was there any more positives about Aliens that you wanted to chuck in that we haven't already mentioned?
I don't think so. I think we've talked about everything. Unless you want to go for another hour and a half.
Christ, what have we got? What notes have I got? It's an allegory for Vietnam, apparently. Stan Winston replaced H.R. Geiger as the designer, which H.R. Geiger wasn't pleased about, but he was working on another film, and the studio thought this was going to bomb badly, and they wanted to sell it to the guys who created Rambo.
Do you think though, late 80s, late 70s, early 80s, for things they either thought were going to bomb or even just did bomb? Like the biggest one for me is The Thing.
Jesus, well, even Star Wars, for Christ's sake.
Exactly.
The studio, even in the weeks leading up to it, were trying to sell the rights. Fox trying to sell the rights to a German bank. They were trying to get this bank to buy the film off them because they had no hope, and now it's a new hope. Now look at them now.
Hey, but I'm dumb.
But yeah, like the thing, and that it's amazing how studios. I don't know what's happened, but because it was such a seismic shift as well from the 60s to the 70s, especially the horror genre, when it went gonzo. Obviously, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out. You don't get that. Or The Exorcist, of course. You don't get that before that. This was doing things to people which they'd never seen before. So studios would have had that reticence of, will this work? Because a lot of them were still the older heads who were used to the older ways of doing things. And then you're asking them to do something like The Thing. And to some studio heads, that might be a bit, oh, this is too wacky for the audience. They won't get it. But the audiences, they were slowly getting used to the idea of these films. But that was also a golden age where you could release a film like The Thing and it would mess people up because it was still new, that kind of feeling.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Like, obviously, we release that kind of film now. We're all desensitized to it now, and that wasn't the case back then. And you hear all these stories going further back. People like Hitchcock who would employ these tactics at cinemas, to try and scare people. That was, whether that was things happening outside the entrance or skeletons on pull strings. There's a name for it that I can't remember. That's escaping me. But they would pull those sorts of things. We did The Birds not long ago, and they used to play on big speakers outside the cinemas, just massive crow noises at the viewers when they were leaving the cinema, and
that's still quite cool though.
That would be amazing, but the audience now, maybe would expect something a little bit. They might laugh it off a little bit, and probably just wouldn't have the same effect now.
Bro, when I saw Hereditary at this theatre, that was my worst screening ever because a lot of people have said the same thing. Hereditary is the one film I've seen. I've had I've quietly bonded with people. I've kind of read their posts and kind of nodded in solidarity. Where so many people have said, "I went to watch Hereditary and I hated it, the experience," because after about 2/3 of the way through, people in the audience were just laughing. They were taking the piss, and it ruined the moment. And I had that in mind as the worst experience I've had because at the end it was just it wasn't a group of people. It was half the cinema. I was just jeering and shouting at the screen to the point where I was getting completely taken out to where I was like, do I like this film? And I mentioned it on the DBP episode, and when I rewatched it, I was like, actually, I do quite like this film. Blocky wasn't as hot, but because I actually got to watch it in the isolation of my own home, I was like, now I get it. But
I was very much in a similar boat to you, and it wasn't really until the second watch where and I was a bit like that with Midsummer as well, to be honest. But it wasn't really until my second or even third watch that I really sort of fully appreciated. Maybe that's just the way it's going to be with Ari Aster's work. But yeah, the cinema, the experience. I think I'm always someone who tries to give movies a second chance anyway, because of, you don't know, like you say, even if you're not having such a bad experience like the one you had with Hereditary, there's still certain things that could maybe take you out of a certain film or might just not hit the same.
How you're feeling on that day as well,
exactly.
Mate. I've watched a few films recently which I remember thinking, this is not very good. Well, and I've seen them recently, and I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking? This is great. Like, Ex Machina was one. I first watched it years ago. I was like, this is a bit naff, isn't it? Then I rewatched it a year or so ago. I was like, this is amazing. Yeah, I rewatched it the other week. And Annihilation was the same. Just came round and I was like, this is just wonderful. And but sometimes a film is just shit and I won't watch it again.
Yeah, I fell asleep for 30 minutes of The Nun when I went to the cinema to see that. And so I rewatched it, and yeah, it was still shit.
The Knights of the Round Table turned up at one point, and I think that's all you need to, like King Arthur and all this kind of crap.
I'm glad I fell asleep.
It's a bollocks. But I like the first Conjuring. But and so in terms of aliens then, was there anything that, we've mentioned a few things, but was there anything which wasn't up to the standard of the rest of the film for you?
No, I mean, we obviously talked about that one line delivered by Meat. But I think one of the big things about this movie is that it is so consistent throughout the entire film. There's no one on screen that you think, oh, that really wasn't great. There's no effects that you think look particularly bad or anything like that. I really can't think of anything else other than that one line.
Can I go now?
God damn it. bloody child actors.
No, to ruin everything. I can't even. I can't even really poke fun at the effects in jest. I can't even say like that was a bit crap. Nothing. It didn't feel too derivative of the first film. There are elements that we mentioned about the airlock at the end, and there were certain moments which was just an alien staple. But no, I honestly can't find fault in this film. I don't think it started too slowly, and I know you weren't saying that, but I can imagine a lot of people thinking, "What's happening?" Because they go for the aliens. But I'm here for the build up. I'm here, and I love that we got that build up. And then we get the payoff with the motion sensors and the trackers. That is such a great way to introduce the alien. Don't just have them jump out the walls. Have the characters have the same dread that we've got. They know something's there. We know something's there. We know what it is. They don't. But we're just waiting for it now, and we're just waiting for it to hit the fan. And I honestly, I can't think of anything wrong with it apart from that one line, the way it's delivered. But is that going to knock it down in my sequel rankings? No. I don't think it is, man.
I'm pretty sure not every line in T2 is pitch perfect. So
no, there's probably a few in The Dark Knight and in Empire Strikes Back. Luke Skywalker's a whiny bitch at times, and I adore those films. Everyone knows that. That's my jam. But goddamn, when Luke Skywalker sits down on Dagobah and flounces his arms down as he crosses his legs, like, come on, you're meant to be the last Jedi. But, so I think then, mate, that may conclude the aliens chat. I think we've covered pretty much everything.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah. I think there's anything we haven't covered. So, mate, thank you so much for coming on tonight to talk aliens. I've been waiting to do this for a while, so thank you for giving me your time.
No problem. Thank you very, very much for having me on. It's an honour.
No, it's been a blast. I always enjoy chatting to the King of Scotland. We've mentioned Behind the Screams and the leading horror podcast in Britain, should we call it? Where can everyone find you on? Where can they find you on social media? Where can they listen to the shows?
How long have you got? We're everywhere now. Like, we're literally... I've just decided to put us in as many places as possible. On Twitter, it's @ScreamsBehind. You can get us on Facebook and Instagram, Behind the Screams Podcast. We're on YouTube, Behind the Screams Podcast. We're now on TikTok. We have a TikTok.
Yes.
Behind the Screams Podcast. We've posted our first few videos up there, but we've got a lot more coming. We're on Twitch. We do 4 streams on Twitch a week, Behind the Screams Podcast. You can find us there. And we're on all major podcasting platforms. You can get us Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon, everywhere.
Everybody get that? Good. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot now, mate. And I always hate when people say this to me, so I'm going to pass the hot potato. If any of the listeners are like, cool, this guy sounds great. He's got so much content. What episode should I start with? What episode should they start with?
Right, I'll tell you.
You don't have to say R1, by the way.
Don't worry, I wasn't. I'll tell you what not to start with. Don't start with any of our first 20 episodes.
Of course.
Much like most podcasts out there.
This is the 21st, actually, of this particular series, so start here, everyone.
We've got loads of great episodes out there. We very recently covered The Exorcist, which I know is one of your all-time favourites.
My all-time, yep.
That was a great episode. We really, really enjoyed that. We've previously done both Ari Aster's episodes, which is a lot of fun. We've got a lot of good content out there. But yeah, I would say go for The Exorcist. We had a really good Thing episode as well. What was our last one? We did Carrie. Carrie we did a couple of weeks ago too, which was a great episode as well.
Yeah, honestly, you can probably take your pick and really enjoy all of them.
We've got 120 of them now, so
exactly.
People have their choices.
There's going to be a film for you there somewhere, or a subgenre of horror there for you somewhere.
Yeah, go the other way. You can listen to our Troll 2 episode, or we started. You know what? Actually, when I brought the girls on board to the sorry, I'm just taking over a wee bit there. When we brought the girls on board, we decided that we were going to take it turnabout every week to pick an episode, and my co-host Lucy got the first choice of 2021. So I'm sitting there, and I was thinking, right, she's going to pick something good. It's going to something that's going to kick off the year. We've refreshed the show. Everything's going to be great, and we did Birdemic.
Great choice. But she's a queen. She's great, but that.
It's an appalling movie, but I must say,
Birdemic.
that episode is possibly my favourite episode I've ever recorded, because we just tore that movie a new one.
The worst films are always the best episodes.
Absolutely.
This is wonderful, but I take back everything positive I've just said about her for making me watch that film. Birdemic.
I'll let her know.
Thank you. Birdemic. Go and check out Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
Yes.
Hear Bloggy talking about the stuff Bloggy talks about, so just brace yourself, bless her heart. But that was good fun. But so you know where to go and find Ian. Behind the Screen, search that all over the internet, and you'll find Ian and the team's work. There's a team effort, Ian and the team over there. And if you want to find me, you can do whatIwatched.co.uk, what I watched tonight across all the socials. Reviews are very slowly going out. I'm getting the mojo back somewhat. If you like what you've just heard, and you know people out there who like the Alien films, do let them know that we've got an hour and a half of a couple of film fans talking about aliens and really diving deep, and also digressing into horror. So especially if you know like sci-fi horror fans, then they're going to totally love this. And if you fancy chucking 5 stars our way, that would really help the show out. It gets us out to more people. It gets more engagement, which as a film fan, I and Ian, we're here for the engagement. That's why we love talking films. Be polite, that's what we're all about as well. But Ian, one more time, thank you so much for coming on, mate.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I hope you've all enjoyed this episode. But until next time, from me, see ya.